Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Singh. This is a presentation on two pieces of historical fiction literature, Langston Hughes' The Negro Speaks of Rivers and Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. In my opinion, these two pieces of literature can help us better understand the problems that people had during the Great Depression. So the Great Depression was a worldwide economic downturn from 1929 until 1939. A lot of people lost their jobs. The stock market failed, which is a major reason why the Great Depression started. A lot of people who were intellectuals, artists, readers, thinkers, there was a decrease in funding for them. Many people, especially African Americans, lost their jobs. Due to the Great Depression, there was more racial tension between Black people and white people. Harlem was a Black neighborhood in New York City. Many people, intellectuals, artists, writers, thinkers, they left the city for better opportunities in other places. The Great Depression led to the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was a celebration of African American literature and heritage. Writers such as Langston Hughes and others wrote works to explain the struggles of African Americans, to teach people about their culture and their heritage. My presentation focuses on Langston Hughes and one of his poems, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. Another author my presentation focuses on is Harper Lee. In my opinion, Langston Hughes and Harper Lee are similar to some extent because they both grew up witnessing the struggles of people, especially African Americans, during the Great Depression. In my opinion, they wrote their works to help educate people about the injustices that existed in the world. That was their purpose. Even today, they're both well-known authors for their works. For this reason, in my opinion, they succeeded in their purposes in educating society. Without their works, I think people would be more ignorant about what exactly happened during the Great Depression. So Langston Hughes was an American writer and traveler. He was a poor boy who grew up in Missouri. His grandma told him stories about the struggles of African Americans. He was an African American himself. He witnessed the struggles of African Americans in Missouri and West Africa. He wrote works to describe his experiences and what he witnessed, the struggles of African Americans. Many people were inspired by his works. That's why he was called the poet of the people. Langston Hughes helped African Americans think better about themselves. Due to racism, some or many African Americans had low self esteems and self concepts because people were racist and prejudiced towards them. Nellie Harper Lee is another author my presentation focuses on. She's similar to Langston Hughes, in my opinion, because again, she witnessed the injustices in the world. She's best known for writing To Kill a Mockingbird. It was a novel. She grew up in Monroeville, Alabama. This is part of the reason why To Kill a Mockingbird is in Alabama, the setting. Her father was an attorney who defended African American men who were accused of murder. Unfortunately, her father could not save them. This is a similar situation in To Kill a Mockingbird. The main character, Jean Louise, her father, Atticus Finch, is trying to defend a black man named Tom Robinson because he's accused of raping a white girl. But the accusations are not true and nobody's listening to him because he's black. Okay. So again, I mentioned Jean Louise Finch. She's one of the main characters in To Kill a Mockingbird. I think Jean Louise Finch represents Harper Lee's interpretations of what she saw when she was growing up. They both grew up in the 1930s in Alabama. Both their fathers were attorneys who were defending Black people accused of doing bad things, but the accusations were not true. They both enjoyed reading. But they were both 6 years old when the Black people were having their court trials. So there are elements in To Kill a Mockingbird that can help us understand the Great Depression. For this reason, I think To Kill a Mockingbird is a historical fiction piece of work. So for one of the quotes, there was no hurry, for there was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy with it. nothing to see outside the boundaries of Macomb County. So this quote represents that because of the Great Depression, a lot of people had little or no money. They lost their jobs. They struggled to find a better job, especially Black people. Usually, white people were more successful in getting jobs compared to Black people. Um, Usually white people had overall better jobs than Black people. As support, Atticus Finch was a white man who was a lawyer. A lawyer was considered a prestigious job. In contrast, Tom Robertson was a Black man. He was a field hand, someone who picked up things from the field. That was considered a low class job. Tom Robertson was Black. It's likely other Black people had similar or worse jobs compared to Tom Robertson. The Negro Speaks of Rivers was a poem written by Langston Hughes. There are some elements in the poem that can help us understand the Great Depression. I feel as though the poem was written when the Great Depression was looming. The poem discussed the challenges of Black people, including racism, segregation, and limited freedom. In my opinion, these problems of Black people became greater when the Great Depression officially started. So when he wrote the poem, the Great Depression was looming. Okay. So in the poem, I feel as though Hughes embodies the spirit of other African Americans who had similar or the same struggles. He writes, I've known rivers and my soul has grown deep like the rivers. So, in my opinion, in my interpretation, his ancestors and their struggles inspire Langston Hughes to keep fighting for the equal rights of all African Americans. For this reason, I think that's why he wrote his works and his other poems to make people aware of the injustice that existed in society and that some kind of reform needs to be made so that African Americans no longer have these struggles. There was little or no freedom for African Americans or equality. And this same idea is portrayed in To Kill a Mockingbird. Nobody was listening to Tom Robertson's side of the story that he was innocent. He did not rape that white girl. Because of racism, they all assumed, or many people assumed, that he was guilty. There are more elements in The Negro Speaks of Rivers that helps us better understand the Great Depression. So I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood and human veins. So in my interpretation, this describes the journey of African Americans in trying to overcome their struggles. The veins in the rivers represent their struggles. In my opinion, Tom Robertson had these struggles. People think he raped the girl, even though he's crippled, he has three kids, and he was legitimately trying to make money in society. He was working for the fields of Mr. Deers for 8 years. Despite him being crippled, having three kids, and legitimately working a job, people still think he was guilty of raping the white girl named Maela Iwell. Okay. So I think Harper Lee created the character Tom Robertson to represent slaves in the South, to represent their struggles. It's likely she witnessed the struggles of slaves and she created the character to help reflect what she witnessed, in my opinion. So again, in my opinion, To Kill a Mockingbird and The Negro Speaks of Rivers, they're historical fiction pieces of work because when readers read them, they can better understand the struggles of people during the Great Depression era. Langston Hughes and Harper Lee were successful in educating people about the struggles of African Americans, about racism, inequality, and other issues that existed in the world. I think because of the novels and the works, people are less likely to have these problems in society today. That's my opinion. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.